First story. My son died committing self-harm because of my entitled husband's lies about having cancer. I'm furious. I beat up my husband. But that's not enough. For a little background. I 38 female married my husband 39 male when I was 23. We were very much in love and got married after dating for 2 years. I've never felt insecure in our relationship. I always felt like I had a great husband. While my friends and neighbors were divorcing, me and my husband rarely had issues greater than arguments here and there. I felt like I had a perfect family. We have 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Our son is 14 and our daughter is 11. Recently, our son became reclusive, locking himself up in his room, spending all day on his phone or his computer. I did encourage him to open up and get some fresh air, but of course he ignored me. I figured it was just teen stuff. I was the same at his age. All my friends and family said he'd grow out of it. Now, my husband is a cancer survivor. He developed bone cancer at the age of 12 and was constantly in and out of the hospital until he was 17 when he beat it. He always talks about having cancer, how he was stripped of his childhood, and how we our family should be appreciative of our lives. I've never been anything but supportive of him, and I know health is a very sensitive topic for him. Fast forward to now. 2 weeks ago, our son killed himself. I don't want to get into the details, but I found him in his room. This is truly the most horrible thing I have ever been through, and I am still trying to recover. But the situation with my husband has only made this so much worse. In my son's note, he says he feels useless, that he's unappreciative, lazy, and that his dad managed to beat cancer, and yet he can barely wake up in the morning. My husband was very distraught over this. I assured him this wasn't his fault, but he was inconsolable, especially about that part specifically. My husband was a wreck. I was too, but I still had to make funeral arrangements and break the news. I called my in-laws to tell them what happened. It's very important to know that I don't talk to my in-laws unless it's about the kids. My husband is almost completely out of contact with his family besides his sister, but she lives in a different state. I told them a bit about what my son wrote and mentioned the cancer. My mother-in-law was very confused. What? Cancer? I didn't know what she meant, so I said yeah. He felt like he wasn't as good as my husband since he survived cancer, but he couldn't do basic things. My mother-in-law then said, "What? He never had cancer." I was so shocked and confused. I told her he did, and he always talks about it. But he assured me he never had it. My husband always has terrible things to say about his mom, so I wasn't sure if I should believe her or not. He calls his parents, especially his mom, abusive and narcissistic. But after the call ended, she sent me photos of my husband in his youth. Pictures of him on the soccer team in 10th grade. But my husband always told me he could never join any sports because he was always in and out of the hospital. This basically proved it. I was furious and blamed him for what happened to our son. After my husband came home, this all happened while he was getting groceries. I yelled and screamed until I couldn't anymore. At first he denied it, but after I showed him the proof, he stayed silent. I couldn't believe it. I punched him in the face, then went outside to get some fresh air. I'm honestly not a very violent person, but this is genuinely the most mad I've ever been in my entire life. I still don't know what to do. My son's funeral has passed, but I am still absolutely furious. I've been sleeping on the couch and only talking to him when needed. How do I tell my daughter? Should I? How do I tell all my friends who see his bullshit posts about being a survivor that he's a piece of SHT and a liar? I don't know what to do. I feel so self-harming, but I don't want to burden my daughter by making her lose 2 family members like that. Especially when that means leaving her with that effing psychopath that lied to me for 17 years. I feel so conflicted. I hate him to my core, but I still love him. Like I said, our marriage has always been good. I've been in love with him for so long now, I don't know how to stop. I've relied on him and looked to him for comfort. I built a family with him, and now I feel backstabbed. It makes me wonder what else he has lied about. Edit. To anyone questioning my story. Like I said, I don't speak to his family. I only have his parents' cell because they are still entitled to visit their grandchildren regardless of how he feels about them. My kids would spend time with them around 1-2 times a month. No, they did not come to the wedding. Like I said, my husband is on very bad terms with everyone but his little sister. We have met, and she was at the wedding, but I still don't know her very well, and she lives in Florida, so it's hard to have a relationship with her. His parents actually did want to come to the wedding, but he didn't want them there. He's always been secretive about his life before he met me. As for childhood friends or anything like that, as far as I know, He's not really close to any of them anymore. Most of his friends that I know went to college with him. And they know about the cancer, so I guess that's when he started lying about it. He has shown me childhood photos, but most are from when he was really young, not when he was a teen, which is when he had cancer. The ones where he is a teen, his head was shaved, so it wasn't hard to believe he was going through treatment. His excuse for not having many childhood photos is that his parents have them all, and since he doesn't like them, he doesn't want to ask them for his photos. I know that self-harming is complicated, and I know that my husband isn't the only reason my son did this. He just felt insecure and compared himself to my husband, who turned out to be a liar. I'm very emotional right now. Anyone would be, so even though I know it isn't my husband's fault, I'm still upset and feel distaste for him, knowing my son died thinking his dad was so much better than him. I don't know anything about cancer besides the basics, so it was easy to lie, I guess. Cancer is not necessarily something that comes up in casual conversation, and I wouldn't talk about it unless he did, so I wouldn't bring up any bad memories. That's all I have to say about that, so I won't be replying to any more comments to defend myself, because apparently other people lie on here. I've never even used Reddit before, so that's why this account is new. Edit 2. Thank you for all your kind comments and your advice. I'm torn on what to do as I can't picture myself ever trusting him again. But I also rely on him financially, and my daughter is already going through so much that I don't want to add divorce on top of it. I also know that long process would drain me out when I already feel like I'm dying. This is not something I think I can get over, but I'm not sure I can leave him either. Comments. Aka_June_Monroe. His family wasn't at your wedding. You never had contact. How does the cancer never come up in conversation? Wouldn't treatment affect fertility? OP. No, they weren't invited. His parents kicked him out as soon as he was 18, even though he was still in high school at the time. His only family member that was invited was his little sister. I don't know why cancer would come up during a wedding, but I guess it's fair to assume he would mention it in his vows or something like that. His parents were upset about our marriage since we had sex out of wedlock, but still wanted to come. My husband said no, and didn't invite them since they acted like our relationship was disgusting just a little bit before we announced our engagement. I don't have conversations with his family. He's almost completely no contact besides his sister. And I don't see her since she lives in FL, and we live in Ma. His family is very religious, and he wants nothing to do with them, which I respect. The only time I talk to them, his parents, is when the kids see them, which is around once a month, and all I say is when to pick them up, and how they're doing, etc. I really know nothing about cancer. If I did, then I probably would have suspected things from the beginning. When I got pregnant, his cancer was the last thing on my mind. Whenever I'd ask him questions about the specifics of his cancer, he'd shut it down. But I assumed it was because it was traumatic to look back on, not because he was lying. Plus, he was bald at some point during his teens, and he would show me those pictures. Ogoble. OMG, you poor thing, losing your son. Has your husband said why he's lied? What was his excuse? Please stay earthside for your daughter. OP. He never explained. He just apologized here and there while I was yelling, and then stopped talking to me, which I'm fine with since I really don't want to talk to him either. But I don't know what the motivation for this would be besides attention and sympathy. Update in the comments. It won't let me edit my post. I don't know why exactly, but here is my update. Update. Hi everyone, and thank you again for all of the supportive comments. I know I can't have a relationship with him anymore, not just for my sake, but I mentally wouldn't be able to. We are still not speaking, but I'm still unsure about going as far as divorce, at least for now, because our family is having such a hard time. I'm also not financially stable and rely on him for income. I haven't told my daughter yet, and I still don't know if I should. I saw my sister today, and I lost it. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. She wants me to tell everyone and expose him, but I'm still not sure if I should for the sake of our daughter. She promised not to tell anyone else, so it's still just between us. As for how my daughter is doing, when everything first happened, she was barely speaking, and I would hear her crying in her room almost every night. I'd go in and cuddle with her, and these moments really are the ones that made me conflicted about telling everyone about my husband's lies. My daughter is already heartbroken, and I don't want her to essentially lose another family member, even if it's not in the same way. For the past few days, she's been seeming better. Of course, my son passed very recently, so it's not like everything is just normal, but she is talking to her friends again, playing outside, etc. Seeing her like this really makes me miss him. I've gotten some feedback saying I was neglectful, a bad mother, etc. Because I didn't get my son the help he needed. I understand people's concerns, but who says that to a grieving mother? My son went out almost every day with his friends. He just wasn't opening up to us as much, which is why I thought he was just becoming a teen. When you're 14, it's normal to break away from family. I did have some concerns though, so we had conversations. But he still wouldn't open up to me and insisted nothing was wrong. Do I regret not looking further into it and getting him help? Of course I do. But I didn't think it was as serious as it really was. Again, talking about me blaming my husband for this. I know that it wasn't about only him. He's my son, and he explained more about why he chose to do what he did. But the fact that he included his dad's cancer in his final words makes me think it played a role. My husband also would constantly tell the kids, appreciate your life, be happy, you're healthy. When the kids, especially my son, would complain about not being able to go out, my husband would say things like, I wasn't able to go out at all as a kid because of my cancer. Be grateful. Looking back, I should have stopped him from saying these things. But he got defensive when it came to his cancer, which I thought was understandable. I didn't want to control him as someone who has never dealt with anything like that. Second story. Entitled husband ruined our 5-year relationship after I confessed to my cheating from 4 years ago out of guilt, and he betrayed me by sleeping with his coworker to make it even and told me to move on, so I physically assaulted him. How can I not be a hypocrite and reconcile? I understand that what I did was wrong. I don't deny that or try to excuse it in any way. I feel horrible about it, and I will do anything that I can to make this right. So while I understand calling me names is a fair game, I am really looking for advice on what to do from here. Very early on in our relationship, 6 weeks to be exact, I went on a trip to visit my sister at her school. The second night there, we attended a huge party, and I was dancing and drinking, and one guy in particular kept hitting on me, and as the night wore on, I started flirting back. I make no excuses. I was drinking but was not drunk. He did not saw or take advantage of me. I just made a horrible judgment call, and I ended up going with him back to his room. I knew the moment it started it was wrong, and I ended up crying while I was lying there. I got up and left as soon as he was done. To this day, I don't even know his last name. My sister was so wasted, she went home with a friend, and never knew I didn't spend the night at her place, as I was there before she got home. I went back home and was just guilt-ridden, and although I knew it would cost me my new boyfriend at the time, I was going to tell him and beg him to forgive me. When I see him the next day, he is already very depressed. He did not get the job offer he thought he was going to get, and he was very down. I decided that I didn't want to add to his depression, so I spent the entire day trying to cheer him up and be a comfort for him. Then the next time I see him, he is so happy with me because he said that I was able to make him forget about how crappy his life was at that moment that once again I didn't tell him. Yes, I know it was wrong both times, but I was young, immature, and scared. After those 2 times we were getting along so well that I just put it in my head that nobody other than myself and the other guy even knew it happened. So why ruin a great thing when I knew I would never do it again and I would never see or hear from this other guy? Flash forward to 2 months ago. We have been together for years now, and in fact we have been together longer than any of our friends have been with their SOs. We love each other, and we live together. He asks me to marry him. I was overjoyed and, of course, said yes. We told our family and our friends, and everyone was happy for us. But 2 days after he asks me, I become overwhelmed by guilt. I called into work because I couldn't function and spent the entire morning sitting on the couch crying. I was a liar and a cheat, and I had tricked my boyfriend into proposing when, in fact, if he knew about it from the start, he would have probably broken up with me. I decided I could not live the rest of my life like that, and determined that when he came home I had to tell him no matter what his mood was. The other part of this that is important is that I am his first and only sexual partner. He knew that I had been with one other guy before we got together, but that never bothered him, or so I thought. He comes home and immediately sees that I'm a mess and asks what's wrong. I tell him, and he is understandably very upset, very emotional. I tell him that I will do anything to prove to him that I have never done anything like that since, nor will I ever do anything like that in the future. I offer to let him go through my tablet, phone, Facebook, anything, and he says that it won't be necessary because he doesn't want us to live like that. He said that he wanted some time to himself to think and said he would sleep on the couch. I told him that I would give him all the time he wanted or needed, but that I would be the one sleeping on the couch, not him. The next morning he is quiet, but does not show any bitterness towards me. I just asked if he was okay, as I didn't want to pry into his thoughts. He told me that of course he was hurt and upset. He said the hardest thing for him was the time frame because he doesn't know if being upset is justifiable or silly at this length of time. I told him he was certainly justified to be upset, and we both went to work. A week goes by, and he seems to get a little better every day, to the point that we both went out to have a somewhat celebratory dinner for our engagement with one of his friends. Everything was fine until Wednesday, when he told me he would be back very late from work. This doesn't bother me at all because this can be a somewhat normal occurrence. When they start on one project, they can't stop until it is completed, and there have been times it has taken 16 hours to do. So I spent the evening catching up on some work I was behind on, watched a movie I knew he wouldn't want to watch, and then went to bed. I woke up the next morning, and he was still not there. I texted him and asked him where he was. He just replied, "I'm on my way home." We passed each other on the street as I had to get to work. I call him, and he just says that he was longer than expected and was going home for some sleep. Okay, this isn't normal, but he did give me a heads up, and he wasn't acting weird or suspicious, so I just went about my day. I come home, and he is sitting in the living room waiting on me. Long story short, he told me that he spent last night with Tracy, a married woman from his work. I just collapsed in the chair. He then goes on to tell me that this was a one-time thing, and that she is in an open marriage, and he has no feelings for her, and she has none for him. But he said that he felt completely paralyzed with anger and envy about me, not only having slept with this other guy, but over my previous relationship as well. He said he knew he was wrong, but he just felt like he had to be with someone else just once, so he wouldn't feel so insecure about me being with other guys, and he had only been with me. I started crying, of course, and then got pissed and started yelling at him. Then he stops me and says, "Why am I yelling at him? I cheated first," and when he found out about it, he never yelled at me, which is true. He didn't. He says he regrets the action, really regrets feeling like he cheapened himself in the process, but that while he is sorry, it has hurt me. He says that even though it was wrong, and he knows it was wrong, he said he's sorry, but felt like it was something he had to do. Now he wants us to move on like nothing happened. I have no idea what to do from here. I would be the world's biggest hypocrite if I left him, but I'm so hurt that I just don't know how we go forward from here. Sorry for the wall of text. Any advice would be appreciated. TLDR. Cheated on my boyfriend 6 weeks into our relationship 4 years ago. Never told BF. Got engaged, felt guilty, and told him. He responds by getting even by sleeping with a coworker. Update. This has been a very rough week. In fact, this has pretty much ruined what is normally my favorite time of the year. Several people have PM'd me asking me to update, but I have just been kind of in a haze and honestly didn't know what to type. I'll start off with this. We are still together. We have agreed to postpone telling people when our wedding will be, but for now we are still together and still engaged to be married. He has agreed to go with me to couples counseling. We can't get in till the end of next month, but we have it set up to go, and his insurance will cover his portion of the bill. And I'm still checking on mine, but we can pay out of pocket if necessary. We have had several long conversations that have involved lots of crying, mostly me, and one full-fledged mental breakdown by him. I'm not going to lie. After posting this the last time, some people were saying they thought she was fictional, and he was only saying he did this. So during one of our conversations, I finally got the courage to just ask him if he was just saying this to make me feel bad. Sadly, he continued to claim that this happened and how bad he feels about it. I'll also just go ahead and admit this now as well. I snooped. I went to his workplace and started looking for her. I've been there many times before, so security didn't even pay me a second thought. I found her and really truly wish I had not. She is everything I am not. She is tall, has big blonde hair, and is extremely pretty. As though my self-esteem wasn't already in the toilet, this pretty much put a fork in me. I never spoke to her, and I've never told him I've seen her, but the thought of her and him working together every day was making me lose my mind. I know how much he likes his ex, and I can only imagine if she is really available to him, he will go back for seconds. But this leads me to another part of my update. I honestly believe he is very emotionally hurt by what he has done. He loves his ex, but he is also very uptight about it, if that makes any sense. He has told me on more than one occasion how he feels like he has betrayed not just me but himself by doing this. He said that the entire time was very weird to him initially, but very upsetting to him ultimately, because he said just going through the act without any emotional ties to the act was unsettling for him, and that he didn't really enjoy it. I'm calling BS on this, BTW. I've seen her, he doesn't know that. And I can tell you he would enjoy that. I've unloaded on him a few times, probably unfairly on a couple of times. But I got so mad one night, I smacked him. I immediately begged him to forgive me because I knew immediately that it was wrong. He still has never yelled at me or even raised his voice. But his full meltdown did reveal that he truly feels betrayed. Sadly, he remembers the weekend that my cheating occurred in great detail because he had asked me to attend a family function with him. And I had already planned to go to my sister's, so I couldn't. He put 2 and 2 together and determined that I was having sex when he was miserable and had asked me to be with him. Basically, we have both hurt each other badly, but we both still want to be together. So we are going to try and make this work. I also asked him again why he did what he did. Well, actually, I've asked him that several times, and he is firm that he did it to ease his own pain. He said that it wasn't just done to spite me or to get even, but he said he wouldn't deny that maybe somewhere along the way he did consider it. The ultimate update to that is this. He has told me he is going to leave his job. He said he does not feel right walking into work and seeing her and both of them acting like nothing ever happened. I did not ask him to do this, and once again, he doesn't even know that I have seen her. Honestly, I am relieved about that part. Do I think he did it to spite me? Honestly, yes, I think there is a part of that in there. But in talking with him, and we've talked for hours on the subject, I just really get the feeling that he thought it would make him feel better. But it didn't. He now feels like he has to deal with the pain of being a cheater on top of trying to deal with the idea of being cheated on. I'm far more emotional than he is, but I can tell you from knowing him for so long that he is a mess emotionally. He is just trying to cope differently than I am. I wish I had a more definitive update for you guys or something more juicy. But this is where we are. We both hurt, we both want to keep trying, and we both are trying our best to heal ourselves while trying to heal each other. Oh, I know it was probably a snotty thing to do, but I demanded that he get tested for STIs, and he came back clean. I know that was humiliating for him, but I just felt like I needed that for my peace of mind. Also, we had sex for the first time since all of this last night. Very intense, not the usual loving emotions from either of us for that at first. But he stopped, and we eventually ended back into a more romantic state soon after. One day at a time, I guess. TLDR. We're both hurting. But we are still together and plan on trying to make this work. Update. Honestly, things have been much better since my last update. We have had several long, honest conversations with each other, and we are both very committed to staying together. And I can honestly say that we love each other. I truly believe he loves me, and I know for a fact I still love him. After my last update, I had to take a long, hard look at myself because so many people were rightfully chastising me about hitting him. I have to agree with several of the commenters that if the roles had been reversed, I probably would have thought it was abuse. Well, it was no different for me. I was abusive, and it's very hard to come to terms with that. I wrote him a 4-page letter telling him how sorry I was. I offered to go to the police and turn myself in, but he said that was stupid. He said that he didn't even think about it, because, in his words, I barely tapped him. That does not make it right. I was wrong, and I make no excuses. It is just as wrong for a woman to hit a man as it is for a man to hit a woman. So I apologized to him. And now I apologize to all of you that read it and were offended. You were right to be offended, and I am sorry for my actions. I let my emotions take me to a place that I should never have allowed them to. It looks like my insurance may not come through for our therapy, but I am going to pay my part out of pocket. He is going to stay at his job, but take a transfer to another office across town. This was a good compromise because he can still maintain his benefits and seniority at his job. But he will no longer work in the same building as her. The only hiccup that has occurred was when we were talking about my indiscretion from years ago. He wanted to know who it was, and once I finally convinced him that I had no idea who he was or how to get a hold of him, he got upset about me hooking up with someone I didn't know. But that quickly passed, and he said that it was dumb to be upset about it. He is doing better about the whole thing. I am trying really hard myself. I don't know which is worse. In his mind, having to make up what the other guy looked like, or in my case, actually knowing what she looks like. However, we haven't even spoken about it the past 2 nights. So I don't know if this is good or bad, to be honest with you. Anyway, sorry that there isn't anything really juicy to report to you. But ultimately, I think we will be okay with each other. And we both are trying really hard to make this work. TLDR. Still talking and committed to each other. Things look better, and hopefully this is going to pass with time. Third story. My high school bully who bullied me and threatened to saw my sister showed up at my workplace after 6 years not recognizing me. So I took my revenge, getting him fired and arrested. Who's the comstain now? Bully. Hello people of r/ProRevenge. I have been an avid reader mainly due to r/ on YouTube and decided to create an account and tell my story of what happened about a month ago. Warning, it's long and boring with a short ending. Backstory: I went to school in a predominantly white area, and being white myself, I had it pretty easy. Parents who cared for me and my activities, friends who respected each other, and all around a normal high school experience. Not really important, just want to paint the picture. Like all high schools, I was bullied. Not a big surprise. I'm your generic nerdy white boy with glasses. I had a small friend group and generally never caused problems. Where it begins, there was this group of popular kids in my school who were on the football basketball team and always caused trouble, whether it be fights or bullying. They never got expelled and were what we called super senior students who get held back in their junior year until they graduate or turn 19. They had a bully boner for my friends and me, but it never fazed us. We were used to it over the years. This was our senior year, and we were all trying our best to maintain our grades and whatnot when I started a class called Engineering Physics second semester. I took advanced placement physics the year before, and my teacher recommended it to me since he also taught that class. I noticed very early on that it was taken as a blow-off elective for people who thought you just build cool stuff and pass. Needless to say, it was, but the tests were physics-based. So, we took them with partners. One day I got paired with one of my friendly neighborhood bullies, who we'll call Chad. Now, I knew he slacked off in class and didn't really care because he just took the class to be with his friends. But they were smart. They never paired with each other, and instead chose the smart kids to basically do the test for them. We got through it, me answering every question, and we turned it in. After the tests, we were allowed to work on our monthly projects, that is, Rube Goldberg, mousetrap car, wooden bridge, etc. At the time we were working on a mousetrap car, and was nearly done a week ahead of the due date, when I finally got started testing different wheels and pull arm lengths. Things were going smoothly when Chad came over and asked for helpful advice, basically just wanting to copy my design and use it for himself. Me. Yeah, I get it. Just use 2 computer CDs and a long copper rod for the pull arm, and it'll get a B at least. Chad. Yeah, I don't really know how to put it together. Could you just do it for me? I was not surprised, but instead of doing as he asked, I thought about showing him how to do it himself. He basically just scoffed at the idea of doing actual work. Chad. Just do it, or I'll F your sister, you little comstain. So I did it, knowing that he would retaliate and probably hurt me or my sister. I was pissed scared, but it was whatever, until a week later. The trials were started, then they ended. I got an A, but Chad got a C. He was furious. Part of me thinks that the teacher knew what had happened and altered his grade due to Chad doing this before, but it came with brutal retaliation. He jumped me later and gave me a black eye, 2 lacerations on my face that thankfully didn't require stitches, and a torn earlobe ouch. I didn't dare report him to the police or a school advisor because I knew it could be worse later. I healed after a few weeks, but I swore if I ever saw him again, he would regret everything. Now, you know I wouldn't be posting here if we never met again. Little did I know it would be 6 years later. The encounter time went on, years went by, and I secured a job with a security company after my associate's degree and made decent money. I mainly deal with truck drivers 95% of the time, and have only written 3 major incident reports in the 4 years I've worked there. Day was normal, no problems, until enter Chad. I didn't know at the moment he came in, but it was him, 100%. I found out after he handed me his license. I knew because he had this one for 3 years obviously expired, and I remembered his putrid, disgusting, vile face. The memories came back. I hadn't thought about Chad in years. TBH, I forgot he even existed until that day. He came in, didn't recognize me, and I took care of him like anyone else, except he has to come back to me when he leaves with his outbound trailer, so I planned. I thought of what I could do to make him remember me, to make him hurt like I did. Now I graduated with a degree in criminal justice, so I have a pretty good understanding of laws and regulations in my state, and since his license is expired, I thought I could use that to my advantage. So I basically told Chad what trailer to pick up and where it was. He went and grabbed it and brought it back to me. Me. Hey, sorry, but I gave you the wrong trailer. We are using that one later to fill a load, and the site manager just called me about it. He gave me one of those really. God, You are wasting my time's looks that I get all the time. Chad. Look man, I'm almost out hours and I need to get out of here. Can't they just reassign it? Me. No, unfortunately once a trailer is assigned. Blah blah security talk. I told him he needed to go get a different one instead. This was true and not part of my plan. But I rolled with it. He kept nagging about how it will get him fired if he doesn't take his break on time, and that he is already on his dispatcher's watch list. I loved when he told me this. I was going to do whatever I could to make him waste as much time as possible. So I called our yard dog Whitey, a driver on site who moves trailers in and out of dock doors, and told him a driver was refusing to drop their trailer, and that he needs to be escorted off the property. The Whitey came and stopped in front of his tractor, so he couldn't move forward, and told him to unhook immediately. For a second he waited outside of his truck, yelling obscenities and stuff. Eventually the Whitey and myself went into the guard shack in case he got violent. Chad. F this. Big mistake. Chad jumped back in his truck, drove around the ids when he was in my guard shack, and left as fast as he could. I was already on the phone with my supervisor, and he told me to call the police. Trailer theft is a felony in my state. So I did, telling them the tractor number, his name, and a description, along with the trailer he had and his general direction of travel. About an hour went by before I had a police cruiser show up and ask for me. He questioned me on the whole who, what, when, where, and how. He told me that he was caught up to eventually and was arrested. They needed me as a witness and to make a statement for their report. So I made sure to mention myself, noticing his expired license and everything else. To the best of my knowledge, Chad will be getting at least a year of prison time as felonies are a 1-year minimum and fired from his trucking company. Granted, I technically just did my job, but I made sure to be as detailed as possible and make sure he pays for what he did to me all those years ago. TLDR. Bully from school beat me up. I see him at my job 6 years later. He breaks the law and is now in prison. Thank you to everyone who read this. I hope some of you got a kick out of my experience, and remember, if someone's job is to tell you what to do, just do it. I hope to have updates when the trial comes around if it ever happens. But the officer told me for the most part my statements should be enough for them, and I might not even have to go to court. But I sincerely hope I get to. I'd love to see his face when the judge slaps a sentence and reminds him of the past and what he did to me. P.S. Who's the comstain now, Chad? Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.